Welcome to Making Your Miles Count Production, an educational program to all Canadian lease owner-operators with your host, Robert Scheper.
All right, Chapter 7, Choosing Your Personal Tax Plan. There's a fair bit of things that shift around when a person is looking to do long-term tax planning and short-term tax planning, wealth building and the like. In 1996, I did an informal survey on the independent operator industry, and I found that 35% of the independent operators actually were living paycheck to paycheck. They had no reserves, they had no savings or anything like that. And that was in 1996. I do not think things have gotten any better since then. I probably would say the numbers are much higher. That is really, really unfortunate, because when people don't have any kind of reserves, they can't make solid long-term choices and decisions. They're just very knee-jerk reaction, very short-term. As soon as people make short-term decisions, that's when people lose huge margins somewhere. I want to talk a little bit about depreciation, because some people don't fully understand depreciation. And probably one of the best ways to understand a concept is you use an extreme example and that actually occurred. I know a guy, this was several decades ago, bought a highway tractor for $120,000, which was pricey at the time, but so that's obviously a number of years ago. And he had a paid-for house. He made an arrangement with the bank that payments on this brand new truck would only be, I think it was $830 or $850 a month on a brand new truck, on a loan of $120,000. And so he started driving, and for the first number of years, his tax situation was fairly normal because he had depreciation on the truck. We were, I guess, 5 or 6 years into it, and the book value of that truck was somewhere around $20,000. The market value was maybe $25,000-$30,000, something like that. But the loan that he had on the bank was about, I think, memory, 95 to 105,000. He hardly paid anything off on it at all. And then it came to the point of time he wanted to sell the truck. Well, he was upside down on it considerably. And that happened over a long period of time. And the exaggeration came from basically what he was doing is, if the average truck payment at the time was, say, $2,500, he was pocketing $1,500 a month without any repercussions on it, because he was depreciating the truck, and he was able to take that $1,500 and just live off of it. So he was living off of his deferred taxes on it. And it's kind of hard to explain to somebody when they owe more money than what the truck is worth, and how do they get into that situation. He wasn't thinking ahead. In this particular situation, the individual was actually bright enough. He knew what he had done. He had it easy for 5 or 6 years, and now he had to flip everything around and start working to recoup what he did. But in various circumstances, people can get into that same situation if they're not careful, because the key is not to reduce your payments if you're in debt. The key is to get out of debt. That's a major issue. Capital cost allowance is the term that Canada Revenue Agency uses for the word depreciation. A truck, $120,000, 5 years later, is not worth $120,000. It's worth $20,000, something like that. But Canada Revenue Agency allows us a certain amount of percentage per year, whether it's 30 or 40%, depending, and you can depreciate that. Canada Revenue Agency understands that 30 or 40% is just an estimate. It really doesn't make that much of a difference to them as long as you follow the rules on it. It doesn't matter how accurate that is, because they know in the end they're going to get every dime of taxes that are available. Like they're going to get their taxes no matter what, because at some point in time you're going to sell the truck. And even if you sell the truck and then rebuy another again, and you can still keep deferring it and stuff like that, keep going like that, sooner or later you're going to sell the truck and get out of the industry, because sooner or later people are going to pass away. And at that time, everything will come down to the exact penny, what exactly is the true depreciation in a vehicle. That's the situation. We're not hiding anything from CRA or anything like that. And it's just that people have to understand the difference between what a book value of a truck is and what the market value is. One of the most wildest experiences in the trucking industry came in the fall of 2022, when people were offered huge amounts of cash for basically operating trucks. I had one client bought a brand new truck, $150,000 in 2019. He drove it for a year and a half, and he sold it for $180,000. He had recapture. He actually had capital gains in a situation like that. So he actually sold it for more than what he bought it for, and yet he was depreciating it for the first year and a half in that route. That situation, my client did the perfect thing. Sell at a high price, get out of the industry, go home, I don't know, play video games. It doesn't make any difference. Just wait it out, because you sold it at the peak time.
Yep.
And he pocketed tens of thousands of dollars. Did he pay taxes? Absolutely, he paid taxes. But taxes are not the end of the world. He was way far ahead in that situation. But let's think about what happens to the individual who purchased that truck for $180,000. First of all, the hyper price of the trucks basically started somewhere in February, March of 2022,
Yep.
somewhere in there. It
Yep.
started really climbing because the freight rates became obscene between basically January and May of 2022, and guys were hauling for $4, $6, $10, $16 an hour, or $16 a mile. Just insane margins that was occurring, and that was one of the reasons why everybody said, if we could just get a truck, we could make even more money. So the word got out there, you buy anything that anybody was selling.
But one of the reasons was you couldn't buy a new truck.
Yeah,
There was a year to 2 year
Absolutely.
waiting period to buy a new truck.
Yeah.
So they wanted to upgrade, and now they had to pay the price.
Or get the volume up there
Yeah.
to make the money
Yeah.
while the sun shines, or whatever whatever it was. So it was a beautiful, perfect storm for freight rates and the used truck market. It was absolutely amazing. Somewhere around June, July, the freight rates started coming down significantly, and they were still buying pretty high. The word was out there. They thought that the freight rates coming down was just a blip and it was going to come back up again or whatever, but there was still orders out there. Were just still trying to do it. Maybe it had to do with they couldn't get anything else or whatever, but the word was still out there. Now the high paying trucks or high value trucks, used trucks, went September, October, and November started really coming down, and basically December it was basically back to normal, because freight rates basically apparently just went down in that field. Now consider the individual who bought that truck from my client for $180,000, and he bought it, I think it was in September, August or September. So they buy something for $180,000, and it was already at that point a year and a half, 2-year-old truck almost. And what's going to happen to the valuation of that truck, like right now or in a year or two from now? That $180,000 August purchase, by August of next year, maybe $100,000. So it dropped $80,000
Easy.
1 year.
Yeah.
somebody was not thinking long term.
No.
And there's going to be some people hurting. One guy, my client, fabulous for him. He made off, he did exceptionally well, but there are some people who are really hurting. And that's an example of short-term thinking where you can get yourself into a real tight situation, and you have to have a long-term tax plan, long-term wealth building plan, that you're not knee-jerk reactioning to a lot of factors in there. So very critical to think long-term. On our website, I also have a leasing versus own video. I don't know if you've ever watched it or so. You've never watched the lease versus own?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah? It's very, very helpful for individuals to know the difference between should I own a truck or should I lease a truck. Makes an amazing amount of difference. Maybe I'll tell the story that I tell in that video. If you're going to lease a truck or own a truck, watch that before you make that choice and decision. But I had a client who put $30,000 down on a brand new truck, and him and his wife started driving it, and they drove for 6 months, and it was a lease, and then the truck got into an accident, was written off. The carrier that they were on, actually the insurance company contacted the carrier, and between the carrier and the insurance company, sorry, I'm getting this wrong. The insurance company and the financing company or the leasing company, they negotiated what the value of that truck was. In the end, the client had to pay $10,000 to get out of there, to get out of that.
And they drove it for 6 months.
They drove it for 6 months, made $3,500 a month payments. So if you add up the $30,000 that they put down on it.
So they lost that too.
They lost the $30,000. They lost the $3,500 a month payments for 6 months, and they lost $10,000 in the end. In the end, they rented that truck for almost $10,000 per month.
Wow.
That is outrageous. And realistically, the reason why that occurred is that the owner was the financing company, and they didn't have any communication. They didn't have any input as to what the value is.
See, and that's still, if I could interject, that still happens today. They're trying to sell a truck, but they can't get finances, so the owner will finance the truck.
Oh.
But the person that wants to buy the truck or lease the truck from the owner doesn't do his homework on the value of the truck, only on what he's saying, and this is an opportunity to get in. I have a friend or acquaintance, I should say more, that did that just recently, and I tried to talk him out of it. He wanted to become an owner-operator, and so he found this truck that he really liked, and the bank wouldn't give him the money to buy the truck, so his boss bought the truck, and now he's making payments to the boss. And he way overpaid for the truck.
Sure.
And it's an old truck, so if everything goes well, he'll do fine. But if he writes that truck off within the next 2 years, he's in bad shape.
And I talk a little bit about, there is insurance that you can buy. They call it buy down insurance, down payment insurance. There's a whole bunch of different words.
Can you buy that for trucks?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It's generally only available for brand new trucks.
Okay.
Not for used trucks. I call that insurance. We screwed you so bad. We want to make sure that we get our money. Insurance. That's what I call it. It's really it's something that's really bad. When you give up ownership, and you're leasing it rather than owning it, and you give up that ownership, you lose control of your own future finances. And leasing is a very expensive route to go. Listen to that video. Hopefully it'll be extremely helpful, and I'm trying to help as many people as possible. If for whatever reason you can't finance, first of all, seriously question why you're doing it. Are you just enamored by a truck? Are you just got so much romance of being an independent operator that you'll do anything, you'll sign anything to do it? That is not a long-term thinking. That's only short-term thinking. And want to say people, it's much better to just be a company driver and wait until you have the cash to do something before you tie up 2, 5, sometimes 10 years of your life.
Yep.
Trying to get out of a hole that you dug for yourself.
I watched owner-operators when the company that I drove for, they had no owner-operators. But when the owner-operators came, I know some of them tried to get me to get in and buy my own. Mm-hmm. And I wasn't really interested in the beginning. I was interested in owning my own truck, mm-hmm. but I wanted to first see what it was like. And so I watched these guys that bought trucks, and then I watched them buy new pickups. And I watched them buy new houses. Their whole lifestyle changed, and I thought, there's a lot of money in being an owner-operator.
Yeah.
But I watched these guys for 3 years. They bought trucks they were $120,000 back then, mm-hmm. or it started with 92. You could buy a brand new truck, and a nice truck. But I bought one about 3 or 4 years later, my very first truck. But I paid $20,000 for my truck, my first truck. And so I paid it off in less than a year. Now I could run for cash. And I ran that one for 3 years. And then I bought another used truck, which was a year old. And I bought it for $25,000 less than a new one. And but I was watching these guys, and then the taxes, and it all looks very glamorous. And there is good money, but you can really get trapped in a hurry.
Yeah. It takes about 2 to 2.5 years before some of the maintenance bills, regular maintenance bills, like tires or whatever, start coming in. And the guys who, within the first year, they go out and they buy a new half-ton and they buy a new bass boat, whatever it is, and they get into wild debt. Mm-hmm. At the 2 to 2.5, sometimes 3-year mark, then you see some suffering. Well, where did your big half-ton go? Well, I couldn't keep up. I had to, and then, look, this is a terrible truck, and they start blaming the truck that, it breaks down or something, when it's just regular maintenance or something like that. And they blame everything except for the position that they put themselves in. Having the long-term effect, you have to be committed long-term. Is there good money in being an independent operator? Absolutely. You got some guys doing extremely well, but you have to be humble to start off with. Yep. And, it's not all chrome and glitz and glamour right from day one.
I had a number of guys ask me because you don't know who's watching you.
Yeah.
As I was watching those guys, other guys were watching me.
Yeah.
And I came out of the office one day, and one of the guys says, "Can I ask you a question?" I said, "Sure." He said, "How come you're driving this old pickup and you're not buying a new truck and you're still living in the same house you lived in? What are you doing different?" I said, "We're trying to put money away, not blow it."
Yeah.
I know the lifestyle. You do make more money as an owner operator. Absolutely, you do. You have more write-offs than you do just as a company driver, but you also have to be very cognizant of the industry.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I know when I went from a company truck to my own truck, before we filled out what we call a bitch list, we just write down and hand it in with our paperwork, and the shop fixes the truck.
Yeah.
But when I bought my own truck, that was the hardest for me. Is I have to, if I don't tell them what to fix, then it's not going to get done, or I do it myself.
Yeah.
And now you're entering in a whole different.
You're actually responsible for what's actually getting and you can prioritize it and know what you do and what you don't. There is, and we talked a little bit about this in a different session too, but it's for long-term tax planning, we have to understand the ups and downs and flows. Like 2022 is an obscene used truck market industry. Probably we may never see that ever again in there. But in 1994, when we went from mechanical to electrical, the new trucks actually became valuable, much more so than the used trucks. And that's, in my opinion, that's what technology should do to any industry, is make the newer stuff more valuable, because you got a mile and a half to gallon more better with electrical. But then in anywhere, like I said, 2001 to 2005, when the pollution control stuff started coming in, that it did the exact opposite. The technology made the newer trucks less valuable.
Yep.
And the depreciation actually, nobody wanted the new trucks after 2, 3, 5 years because everybody knew that all the headaches that were starting to happen with these things. In 2014, I went to Truck World in Toronto, and I handed out CDs for our firm and the like. And I did a very, very quick survey on 1,050. I know it's 1,050 because that's how many CDs we handed out. And we asked one basic question: do you have pollution control on your truck? Emissions stuff. And so I think it was about 70 or 80% of them said no. Very small percentage says not anymore. So that means they deleted it. But the vast majority of them says no. They have older trucks. And independent operators, good, solid, business-minded independent operators, didn't trust the new technology, and rightfully so. They made a great call there. They let the companies experiment with the new technology to find out what would affect. Well, the first effect was, or one of the major effects, not just the higher maintenance, but their fuel economy went down, and the cost per mile. Well, why would you buy a brand new truck and get worse fuel economy? That's why they backed off on it. So we have to be very sensitive as to what creates value and what doesn't create. Now, whatever, 2018, 19, things, you get better fuel economy back again, so it's reversed it a bit, but the prices are just through the roof. And what exactly you can buy for a reasonable amount. Realistically, if you want to buy a $180,000, $200,000 truck, cents per mile, the $20,000 truck gets the same cents per mile, and you have to balance that out. And if you're not at all a mechanic and never want to be or anything like that, maybe the industry isn't. Like the independent operator industry isn't what you should be looking into. It's much better just to be a driver than and like. So you have to have some mechanical sense, or you have to have a very good relationship with a mechanic who can help you and you really, really trust. That's a huge factor.
Learn things.
Learning how to
go on YouTube, figure. Like even
that's one thing. The YouTube has changed how we learn things and make people much more independent.
Yeah.
I mean, when we were young, we had World Book encyclopedias we had to page through. And my grandchildren learn way faster than I ever did 35 years ago, that's for sure.
But even doing your own oil changes and grease jobs, just that, the money you save, like they charge you like $100 now to grease your truck or more. They'll charge you an hour.
Yeah.
So if the rate is $100 an hour, that's what they'll charge you, is $100 plus.
If you do it yourself, it's like driving half a day. You're making or a day.
It's
sometimes.
$8 for a tube of grease or less.
Yeah, and
$4.
It's not just that, which is fabulous. I mean, $100 saved is $100 earned.
Correct.
Or more than $100 worth of work that you have to generate. But going underneath and greasing it, you actually see the engine too, and you see what's going on, and you see, oh, wait a minute, this doesn't quite look right, or something like that. You catch things beforehand.
And even doing your own oil changes, I do every 3 months. You send
samples,
oil samples, and you send those in. And then they send you back on exactly what's in your oil. If all of a sudden you're starting to get antifreeze in the oil, or you're getting shavings in the oil, you can say, wait a minute, I'm developing a problem. And so you can do a pre-maintenance repair. I just talked to somebody recently. He wrecked his motor. I mean, he really, really wrecked his motor. He wrecked the crankshaft, everything, which normally doesn't happen. But for 2 weeks, he told the mechanic, there's an issue. I'm losing antifreeze, and I don't know where it's going. And And then the one cylinder went. He spun a bearing because of antifreeze in the oil. And and I told the mechanic, I said, he told you 2 weeks ago already that he's losing antifreeze. And you just shrugged it off. And he said, well, we didn't know where it was going. I said, it doesn't matter. You check it.
Yeah.
And so they ended up, instead of it being just a simple $8,000 fix, it turned out to $65,000.
Yeah. Yeah. That's
So
preventative maintenance is
and knowing a little bit about things like that is so crucial, especially today when everything is so expensive.
Yeah. I agree. Maintenance is a huge issue, especially with used trucks. That's it. But you all have to see the big picture and where you're headed. Nobody does it perfectly. Like to go from A to B in wealth, it's never a straight line. It's always zig and zag, but you're heading in the same direction. You course correct. The people who learn to course correct are the ones who end up getting what they actually desire and want.
Thanks for stopping by Making Your Miles Count. For further Making Your Miles Count productions, call us at 877-987-9787 or download us at makingyourmilescount.com.